studio, powered by Scott Tree Services.
Hi, welcome to Silver Linings. I am your host, sometimes co-host like I am today, Janine Barrows. And in the studio with me is Mike Conway. You know him. You're very familiar with him. And our producer is coming on with us today, too. And his name is Will Tiller. He's usually the guy behind the keyboard and the cameras for us. And we're going to have a conversation about planning for a healthy wealth and what it means to do so and why we should do so. Previously with Mike, we've had conversations about 401k planning and retirement planning. But when do we do that? How do we do that? Where's the starting point? Is there an ending point where it's too late? Why is it so important? And all those great things. And we have Will on today because he's going to offer a little more youthful perspective of what it's like to be a man in his 30s who is making his own plans and listening in on what he should and shouldn't do and how that might impact his future planning. So thanks, guys. Thanks for being here today.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
So, Mike, this is really, you're the king on this topic, so take it away.
Well, I guess the one letter that comes to my mind is the P word or letter. It stands for procrastination.
Oh, boy.
So, I think we're all guilty of that.
Anywhere.
Yeah, I'm telling you, if you, how many times I've heard, gee, if I could have started this earlier, I would be, so much further ahead. And that's absolutely true.
I've spoken those words
Yeah,
before.
I think we all have. Yeah, absolutely. So
Don't be that guy, Will. Don't be that guy.
Right.
But we are. And a lot of it's because of a lot of confusion, what to do. There's so much information out there, and it's a lot of times it's conflicting.
Conflicting and so much, like you said, it's really hard to kind of sort through what actually is applicable to you.
Right. Absolutely. And so that's where professional planning it really is a really good thing to do. So a lot of us have plans and or not really plans. What we have is dreams and we have wishes, but they don't become a plan until you actually write it down and do something about it. So that's the key, is to actually get off dead center and start a plan. And if you did it with a professional, you're probably going to have a much better result. So
that's a good point. Unlike Will, I am a little bit older. And my husband and I were recently having a conversation that we have been so busy running to stay above water and live within a certain standard of life that we haven't stopped to plan for what's around the corner. We're just running towards that corner. And that is when you have those conversations, you get to that realism that this is where you're at. And maybe you really need to stop, pull back, make a plan and start setting things into play to achieve that plan. Whereas we've just been, making sure all of our T's are crossed and our I's are dotted, but that doesn't necessarily equate to a plan.
Right. Well, one plan that's very simple to put into action is there's an old Aesop quote, and it said, "A piece of all you earn is yours to keep. So pay yourself first, and then develop a lifestyle on what remains." And that is such good advice. I can't stress enough how important that is to do that.
Okay, we'll write that down for you.
No, absolutely. I agree 100% with that. It's always that don't live above your means sort of philosophy. And, always, we were talking off air too, kind of living like you're broke. Imagine in your bank account that you have X amount that you got paid, but really in reality, the other amount is what you should be spending on, what you should be using for expenses. And that other amount that you might see in your bank account, that's imaginary. Don't even touch that amount. I guess that's, in my opinion, just sort of split what your bank account says, I guess is a good way to look at it.
Everybody has an idea on that sort of thing. I used to work a lot with new officers in the Air Force, and they get out of the academy or get out of OCS, and they're now lieutenants and they're making money. Well, they never were making money before. They were, and so now they've got this first paycheck. That's a perfect opportunity to start a plan. And the plan would be, okay, I'm going to pay myself, say, 10% of what I earn to myself. I'm paying myself first. I'm going to learn to live off of 90 or maybe 80% of what I earn.
Right.
which is great. I mean, it's 80% is more than they were making prior to that. so they're actually doing pretty good at that
That's a
point.
valid
And then
point.
every time they get a raise, because they do, it's periodic with time and service, take a portion of that, stick it to their plan, and then raise their lifestyle by the amount that's left over. So they're always going to do a little better, and they're always putting money away. And the guys who did that after 20 years in the military, they were financially independent. So they could retire and not have to get a second job and move on. So, but if they didn't do that and they waited, now 10% doesn't work. Now you need maybe 30, 40% because you lost that time element of compounding. And that's such a big deal. So
Absolutely.
so a lot of us find ourselves in that position, and I'm sure I'm speaking to the choir. But
Yeah.
the point is that even though you might be in that scenario, maybe you're in your 50s, 60s, maybe even, you say, gee, I should probably get started. It's not too late to have a plan, and that would be another really good reason to come in and talk to a financial advisor. What can I do now that I haven't done anything my whole life?
Right.
So,
Because technically, it's never too late to be conscientious of where your money is, how you potentially can grow it. Maybe the end results may not be as large as if you had begun that planning 30 years prior, but obviously, if we show restraint with our financial behaviors, we will see a benefit. And if you're wise enough to show restraint and apply it
right,
into a plan for growth,
right.
Yeah.
I was mentioning earlier about a gentleman, and I always give credit to when somebody gives me a good idea. His name was Jim Rohn. He passed away about 3 or 4 years ago. Great motivational speaker. And he talked about teaching children how to give. And so you give a kid $1 and you tell them to take 10 cents and put it in the poor box at church. The kid will generally do that, no problem. The problem is if you don't teach a kid to do that, and now he earns $100,000, how will he give $10,000 away to charity or to something? Because he doesn't know how to do it. And that's where we find ourselves a lot of time later in life is, gee, it's going to take that much to do what we need to do.
Yeah.
And but that's where we're at.
Now, Mike, if I may, as I'm getting older, it's going to be 401ks, retirement plans. What advice would you give someone like my age who come in? I know a little bit about like Roth IRAs, that sort of thing, stocks, bonds. What would you say the best piece of advice for someone my age as far as saving and putting away?
Well, 401k plans are actually a really good plan for employees for sure, and for employers too, because they get a tax break in the process. But yeah, if the employer is going to match amount of money, why not do that? That's 100% profit on day one.
Right.
So absolutely take the match. Whether you put it into a Roth or not really depends on your tax situation, what you think taxes are going to be in the future. Tell me, Will, do you think there's going to be more taxes in the future or less taxes in the future?
I don't know. I know everything's going up. I know the price of everything's going up. And I know for my generation, it's a lot harder to make those big moves, sort of say, get a house, get home loans, those sort of things. It's more and more harder for my generation than it was previous generations. So I only assume that it's going to get a little bit more tighter as time goes on. I don't think it's going to loosen up at all.
Well, actually, you'd be correct on that because if you look at taxes, if we go back into the 1970s, we had a 73% tax bracket.
Oh, man.
So, and in fact, in the 50s, we had a 90% tax bracket.
Wow.
So right now with our 39% tax bracket, taxes are on sale.
Wow.
So it might not be a bad time to think about Roths because you don't get the tax break, but that money now grows tax-free for the rest of your life. Which is an awesome, good thing when you're in your golden years to have tax-free money.
Oh, yeah.
So it's hard to get a lot of money into a Roth because we're limited as to how much we can put in each year. So, but many 401k plans have the option to do Roths in their 401ks. So
Wow.
again, you want to talk to a financial advisor in the process.
And you just brought up a really great point, Will. Things have changed a lot generationally for the cost of living. And if we were just talking about a home, my parents, if I remember correctly, they spent probably around $110,000 on a home back in the late 80s. And I think they had to pay like 12% interest, was on their loan back then. My husband and I, flash forward 30 years, buy a home for $110,000, and we have a 6% loan initially, and then renegotiated down to 3% loan. But the home was in that bracket. And now the homes on the markets on average are $250,000 to $350,000 for an equivalent square footage home that my husband and I brought my daughter up in, and that I myself kind of grew up in here in Florida. So there's a drastic change in what it costs to survive, and not just survive, but have a quality of life, have ownership of a home, a safe space, some property, some long-term assets is changing consistently. Right. And with those changes comes an important twist or turn in the way you're saving for the future, because my parents' future may be very different than what mine is, and where my daughter's is in reference to the cost of living, the overhead of her quality of life. And I think that's a really valid point. Well, when you're making a plan and knowing how things are shifting and changing, knowing that it could shift so drastically. So where my parents were living in a world where they had a 12% interest, but the value of the home was lower because you got more for that square foot value. We got less for the square foot value, but less interest rate. And now the youth today looking to buy a home are looking at very high costs, with high inflation, with interest rates as well at 8%. So very different struggles generationally over the time, but yet they're impacted by it as well. I'll be impacted by it, and so will Will.
Absolutely.
How do you plan ahead for something like that? Hold that thought, though, Mike, because we're going to take a break. We're going to go to our commercial, and we're going to come back and delve deep into that.
That's it. All right. Be right back.
If you operate a small business, you need services like payroll, tax compliance, HR tools, and other resources. You need Complete Employee Solutions. Vero Beach has a team of professionals, including Anthony Sammons, Matt McCain, and Jennifer Comer, who saw the need for competent payroll, HR, and employee leasing services. Call Complete Employee Solutions at 772-978-7277 or visit their website at CompleteEmployeeSolutions.com.
Get ready to experience the rhythm of a lifetime with On Your Feet, the electrifying Broadway musical celebrating the extraordinary journey of Emilio and Gloria Estefan. From humble beginnings in Cuba to global superstardom, their music transcended borders and inspired millions. Don't miss your chance to dance, laugh, and sing along with the music that defined a generation. On Your Feet starts April 9th at Vero's beautiful Riverside Theater. But you don't have to wait. Get your best tickets now at the box office or riversidetheater.com.
Hi, we're back. That was our commercial sponsors, and we are so very grateful that they invest into the Evergreen Media Production Team studio and all of the shows that they produce. And on that note, I also want to thank our specific sponsors, and that is Conway Financials and Rooney and Rooney. Both of them have great teams that work with their companies and are available for you to be a resource and a tool in your future planning. So please, if you find a need, reach out. So before we went to commercial break, we were beginning to discuss the average person's perspective of inflation and interest and the impact on the cost of living and thus the quality of living of separate generations, and how that could possibly negatively impact for when a generation is planning based on their life experience for their future needs, not knowing what the future is going to look like and that what their needs may be as they age. So
absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I was going to say too, Janine, with buying a home for my generation, I think, Mike, I think you can attest to this as well. I think a lot of my generation are not even looking at houses anymore. We're looking at alternative ways to get homes. Maybe it's a tiny house. Maybe it's buying an RV. You see a lot more.
I see a lot of that. You hear a lot.
Right. Yeah. A lot more of those like vans as well. Those, you know, they turn those
travel
around.
experience. Yes. The nomad with a zip code.
Right. Exactly. So, Mike, what would you say, like, what would you think is you're seeing a change in that with the younger generation, not so much more concerned with buying a house, maybe just more concerned of how do I, like Janine said, plan for the future, but not planning to buy a house like the previous generations were. That was their goal.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, that's a huge question, and it's a real problem right now of ownership, property ownership for young people. And by them not having skin in the game, it's changing our politics quite a bit.
And the skin is more, there's more required. I started telling my daughter, you have to have $10,000 saved up to be able to be ready when you get out of college. Now it's like, no, you need like $25,000 cash saved up, because if you potentially want to put some money down on a property or an asset so that they have a space to go to, it requires at least that much, because like I was mentioning, on average, it's $200,000 plus, and you want to put 10, 15.
Actually, surprisingly, there are a lot of mortgage companies out there that will have 0% down or 5% down, and kids can do pretty well with that. Actually,
all right, I'm learning.
And in other countries like Japan, for example, they have 100-year mortgages.
Wow.
So the properties are so expensive that really, when you buy a property, you're really buying a property for not just yourself, but your kids and maybe their kids.
Generations
of so yeah, the 100-year mortgage is not far away for us either, quite frankly. But that all being said, I used to tell people when they were thinking about buying a house, and I said, really, you really need to have money also, not just a house, because you can't take the gutter to the bank.
Right.
So you have to have money, and the amount of money you're going to need. What your mortgage is today, 30 years from now, that amount of money will just be your light bill. So you've got to have income when you're older, and the house isn't going to do it. So that all being said, I'm not saying don't buy a house. I definitely agree, but think about it as an investment. Unless you're somebody who's really, really good with fixing things up and you're always going to be there and supervising, maybe you might want to consider another alternative, which would be really equity investments in the marketplace have always outperformed real estate. Not on every single year, but overall, over time, you're going to do better probably in equity investments with professional management.
So with my average person ears, I am hearing that, yes, a home is important for a safe space, a shelter, longevity, but not to be banked on for a long-term asset that's going to keep you afloat to keep a quality of life as time goes on.
Right. Actually, they had done a study back where I was living in a place in Pinecrest in Miami at the time, and the houses were selling in the 1950s, late 1950s, for $10,000. I sold mine in mid-90s for over $1 million.
Wow. So in 40 years,
it grew quite a bit, right? Had I put the same $10,000 that would have bought that house in 1950s and stuck it into, say, I'll throw out Templeton Growth Mutual Fund, it was well worth over $3 million. So that's my point. Yeah, you got to live somewhere. Why not own your house? I agree with that. Unless, of course, you're going to be somebody that needs to move on a regular basis. The cost of buying, the cost of selling, the cost of keeping it up. You got to put that into the equation as well. Or you really don't have that issue with equities in the marketplace, and you can just leave where you're at and go someplace else. That all goes with you. So
now, Mike, are you taking sort of a risk with seeing previous, housing market bubbles and things in the past, especially in my generation with 2008? And we had a couple other ones where the housing market kind of fluctuated. Seeing it kind of now, too, where the prices are basically astronomical. Of course, they're going to come down again. Mm-hmm. So is buying a house, like, say, for my generation or a little bit older than me, is that going to be a risk in this time, or should we wait, or what's the best move for that?
Not being a realtor.
Right.
But I bet you to say that in the history that I've been around, I don't remember prices ever coming down on almost anything.
Yeah.
So I don't think prices are going to come down. I think interest rates might come down. I think they will come down, and it might make it more available. Hopefully, some salaries will go up. So the point is that no, I don't think the prices are going to come down. So if you're waiting for that to happen, you might be
So
a
we're having
Still
a
at
little bit
mom's
of
house then, I guess, right?
I know for me and my friends, we talk a lot about that and think that it's going to come down. So you're kind of giving me an eye-opening moment here.
Yeah.
Where maybe my exuberant hope that it is more financially feasible for them is wasted in the sense that it probably won't change too much.
Not too much. And if we like the market too, did a tumble in 2008.
Yes.
Right.
But where is it now?
Yeah, that's true.
I mean, yes, for about every 10 years, we're going to have 2 down-year markets and 8 up-year markets. So, I mean, I'm going to take that bet. Of course, you could be invested in the buy and hold strategy doesn't work always. I mean, you could have invested in Shearson Lehman, Eastern
or
Kodak,
you didn't know
or
when
Sears
to
and
fold them, like Kenny Rogers said, because that's
Right.
happened to me when I got caught with no cards in my hand.
That's right.
Well, unfortunately for the layperson, emotions drive the train, and unfortunately, it's the exact opposite of what we should do. Most people, when the markets go way up, they say, I want to get part of that. So they're greedy. They want a part of it, and they buy. Well, they buy it at the high of the market, and they get scared when the markets go the other way. So fear drives the train in the down market. So they sell. So they're selling low and buying high, which is completely opposite what we would like to do. Unfortunately, we never know. Nobody's out there ringing a bell saying, this is the new low, this is the new high. You don't know until after it's happened. So the idea is to get quality stuff and hang on to it for the long haul, and you're going to be just fine.
But not to count on it being your lifeline buoy.
I think it is a lifeline buoy as far as you need money in our golden years. I mean, if you retire at 65.
No, I mean the purchase of a home, because it's a great place to live and we all need it and we want to have a good home we can invest in, so the quality and value goes up, but not to count on it and being our windfall that's going to save us.
Right, it's going to save us.
Right.
Yeah. No, you need to have an investment plan to save you. Absolutely.
I do like what Mike was saying, though, with the lifeline buoy in your golden age of having that extra income, having that extra money in your back pocket. You know, we were talking off air how I'm saving at my age just for those rainy days. Maybe you lose that job that was bringing in that income. Maybe your situation changed. It's always good to have that money to fall back on, for sure.
I use a series of very simple way of looking at things. Is I draw 3 circles on the board. And the first circle, I have an R in there. And the second circle is an I, and the third circle is DNN. The first circle with the R is reserve money. And Will, you were talking about that you were able to have money, when rainy days. I mean, things weren't great. I needed that money. And everybody's going to have a different number there for what's important for them. The I money really indicates income. So right now you have a job, but when you're 65 and you're retired, you don't have a job anymore, but you want to maintain your money. So we're going to have some sort of source that's going to generate an income. So Social Security would be one of them. And then the other category is the DNN, which is do not need now, but I know I'm going to need it in the future.
Oh, I like that. Right. I need a DNN.
So that's where
DNN.
We need to make some decisions. How much is going to be safe? How much is going to be risk? And that's where we want to go to school on.
So tell me the acronym again.
Do not need now money.
No, the whole.
Reserve, income, and do not need now.
Do not need now. I like that.
So I like that too, and that's a great way for us to begin the goodbye to our guests, and well as our listeners and watchers. Follow up, but take control of your finances and make some steps. They can be as simple as envelopes or boxes, or really going and meeting with a financial advisor like Mike and his team to talk about what you can do. Even the most tiniest of steps can get you into the places you want to be long term. So if you have more questions, like Will and I do, reach out to Mike over at Conway Financials here in Vero Beach. He is a wealth of knowledge and life experience, and I have no doubt that you too will walk away with information that'll help you begin a new path that hopefully will keep you on track for your future needs and costs and the quality of life you hope to have. Until we see you next week, I hope you have a peaceful week, and we'll see you then. Bye.